I just say it.
It's Danu on Fire and welcome to the show. Today's show is a bit different. We are speaking about politics, considering the fact that we have a general election coming up and the fact that this is also our chance to choose wisely, do our part and wait for the big house to be filled with people who can run this country and take it forward. And that's what we are looking at and hoping for. With me, I have someone, they have been paired together in multiple occasions. They've always been like two peas in a pod. The one and only Harsha and Eran, I could just say names like that. No, anyway, formalities we have reduced a little bit. But remarkable two gentlemen who have actually spoken and preached what they actually practice, and at the same time believed in leaving their comfortable lives to serve the country. I'm so sad about this. Number one, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Number two, I was actually one of the most shocked people when I was told that both of you all are contesting this year. How has the run been, considering the fact that it has been a very sketchy presidential election with all the parties, and it's not a majority win, it was a win. How is SJB looking at this election?
Well, we are going into this election looking to actually get a majority of seats and form a government. Now, normally after a presidential election, the normal conclusion that people come to is that the president's party forms the government. Now, that logic doesn't really hold. Logic didn't hold even in this presidential election. A party which had a very small majority got a president elected, even though it was on a minority outcome. So the logic doesn't hold here either, because normally if you get a UNP president or an SLFP president, the base vote would be probably about 40%. Then on the floating vote, they would gather 10 or 15 or whatever and build it beyond the 50%. But here, if you say that the JVP votes was 3%, we multiplied by 3 times, it's 10%. Still 32% of those who have voted from other parties. Therefore, I would expect the number of seats they get actually to come down, because in a parliamentary election, people are looking at the district, they're looking at the particular people are contesting and so forth and so on. So really for us, the issue is to hold our vote base. If we hold our vote base, relatively the number of seats will go up. And if the number of seats go up, we certainly are the biggest party in the country. UNP, SLFP, SLPP have all virtually disappeared. So we are the largest party in the country. If we get the largest number of seats, then the party with the largest number of seats has to form a government. And we will form a government, and we will certainly work with the president the people have elected.
How has this run been?
Exciting. I mean, we are coming into this soon after island-wide run, going with Sajith, speaking to folks across the nation, and then suddenly we are restricted to the district of Colombo. I mean, I don't really like this in the sense that we are competing against each other. That's the preferential voting structure that we have. But we try to do it in the most gentlemanly way possible. You know, Eran and I are running in the same district. I mean, I want people, if they vote for me, to vote one for Eran. I think
You have 3
it's vice
choices.
versa.
I also want people who are voting for me to vote for Harsha. Yeah.
Who would you say is the third vote?
But as Harsha said, naturally the system is such
Yeah.
that even friends have been pushed to be competitors.
But then there's also a third vote.
There is a third vote. Yeah.
Who would you all recommend as a third vote?
No, it would be traditional that not now all the time we across the country we say give a preference vote to the leader of the party.
Right. Now, just wanted to speak to you about where the country stands right now. We have had so many mixed reviews with the NPP government coming forward and currently holding fort till the upcoming election. There have been some changes, there have been some dynamic headlines that have come out. But at the same time, consistency and deliverables for the next 4 to 5 years is what eventually it all melts down to. If this government succeeds in finding the seats that is required, do you think this country's growth could be crippled, or do you think it will stagnate, or do you think it will be for a flourishing future?
I mean, it's about one's ideology, you know. I mean, how are you going to grow? Where is the growth going to come from? You know, that's the real question. You know, our thinking has always been it must come from outside, that we must become a dynamic global player, that we should build bridges to the world, you know, and become a component within a larger machine. You know, we may call it a global production network, for instance, or global value chain. So together you create value, and geographic boundaries, politically demarcated boundaries, are becoming less and less relevant in a global context. You know, whether it is the European Union or whether it is the RCEP in the Asian region, people are, you know, moving production facilities to places where they feel give them the best return on investment, right? And also components are sliced. You know, if you take your telephone, Danu, 43 different countries contribute to make that iPhone, but we are not a part of it. And that is because we've had a closed ideology. You know, we are thinking we will do it here, you know, put up big walls, tariff barriers, you know.
Also,
So
give me a 10% deal.
or something like that, right? So,
That could be another reason.
so whether we flourish, whether, as you say, cripple or sort of muddle along, will depend upon this coming 5 years, the government, what their ideological position is in terms of getting growth.
There are so many faces contesting this time, especially in Colombo. Have you all checked the others who are the competition for you all?
I haven't, because I don't think it's competition. I think it's more about the party there rather than the people there. In fact, the people there could be worrying. I'm not talking just about Colombo, because on one hand they have a front, and the front is called NPP, and then they have really the core is JVP. Now, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was also a good front, if I can use the word now, and acceptable to people. He went around saying good stories they want to hear, because we had increased the taxes, because we saw the country running into a problem. We tried to narrow the budget deficit. We did all of this: flat inflation, flat interest rates, stable exchange rate in the 2017, 18, 19 period. But he came around and said, I'll cut the taxes. Business community also, you know, went for it. And then they went to the general election, and then they won the general election, also overwhelmingly number of seats. Right? Same party president, same party parliament, 1 year crash. You say, so I think that it doesn't have to be from the same party. Even a same party can crash. The important thing here is to appoint the right people. I think the country has a much better chance of succeeding if actually we form the government, particularly on the economy. Harsha de Silva went around the country saying, you know, I'll catch the rogues, I'll catch the rogues. We, Harsha and I, fully for it. Please catch the rogues. Right? Then he said, rule of law. We are fully for it. If I do something wrong, I'm sent to hospital. If you do something wrong, Danu, you are sent to remand. That's not equal applicability of the law. No way. We are all for equal applicability of the law.
Chances of survival is more for you even in prison.
Than you. Yeah. Then they talked about constitutional reform. JVP has been talking of constitutional reform, the presidential system. They don't want it for the last 30-40 years. For heaven's sake, do it. Now you are the president of the country. We will be raising both our hands. So we will back him on the rule of law, constitutional reform, catching rogues, all of that. But he better have us run the country and the economy, and he better back us. Otherwise, I can see it's going to be a precarious situation for the country, because we are still not out of the woods. We think that in 5 years we can get the country out of the woods. If we fail this time, like they put Gota and they put his people in there, it took only 1 year, it will fail. And if it fails, it will take 15 years before this country comes out of the mess.
On that note, we're getting to a break. We'll see you on the other side. We're checking out Taj, Samudra as always. They are so hospitable. Thank you to our friends at XXL for joining us on Danu Fire. Now, when you really want to go out there, look your best and shine, you need to feel your best, and you need some options. And XXL has those options for you. No matter how curvy or voluptuous you are, they have something for everyone. Visit them today at their flagship store, if not at One Golf Face, Colombo.
I just say it.
Welcome back to the show. Two people who have sacrificed their good times in life to be in politics and serve this country. But at the same time, we are speaking about policies that could develop this country and take it forward. Funny thing is, when I go through my Facebook, half of my friend list is contesting this year. Like everyone either has
But I thought you had many friends, Danu.
like all of them are there. There's a parrot next to them or a coconut or something they're holding, and they're saying they're contesting. And there's been a huge uprising in cotton saris, and you know, the whole pulled back hair for the ladies. It has been a look and feel that has really transformed. You know, the current profile picture looks very worthy. The next one is like a very, you know, yay man, how are you? Want to ask you all, tell us the current realistic situation of where this country stands, and how was this country governed during the time of former President Ranil, and where did he leave the country and where is it going now?
Oh, me?
Because I'm speaking to you all on more financial levels. I think that's
No, okay.
the realistic
Okay,
picture.
sure. I mean, the reason why we fell into trouble was not just because, you know, Gotabaya mismanaged it in the, you know, few months he was in office. It was building up for a long period of time, because, you know, we were becoming a very closed economy as opposed to sort of, you know, driving growth through exports. You know, we were borrowing a lot in dollars, but not producing and selling enough to the world to earn dollars to pay back those loans. right? We were insular, we were statist, and we were inefficient. So that was building up. At some point, unless major reforms were done, we were going to face some serious issues. So when President Gotabaya sort of suddenly, reduced taxes, that was a catalyst that, brought the economy to the verge of collapse. And then because they didn't, even at that time, go to the IMF and sort of fix the problem, it just, went bust. And then RW came, and what he did was what any economist would have done at that time, meaning, to bring inflation down from what it was at 70%. You needed to increase interest rates. Interest rates went up to 35%, and he had to increase taxes, he had to rebuild revenue, had to restructure the debt because we just had no money to pay because our reserves were completely dry. So he did those things. And when you did that, he was able to sort of stabilize the economy. So he gave it leadership. The officials did what had to be done. And then when he left, where we were was a place that was quite precarious because we had certainly come out of the depths of the crisis, but we were and we are nowhere near getting out of the crisis. So like Eran said at the beginning, next 5 years are going to be extremely important in order not to sort of, like somebody said, we are at the knife's edge. We got to manage this extremely carefully, and we cannot go back on the reform agenda, and it is going to be tough, but I'm sure we can get it done because we kind of know where we need to take this country to. We know the direction where it got to go, and we have a good understanding of the kind of reforms we need to do, right? So that's where it is realistically.
I would take off from where Harsha left off. So far it's all built around fiscal reforms, you see, and the international sovereign bond issue also needs to be concluded, faster the better. And then if the economy is to grow, where we will take it much further. The country needs regulatory reforms. All this licensing that goes on and the corruption surrounding it, we have to relook at all of that to create the environment for businesses and for the private sector. It's a private sector that creates wealth. It's a private sector that creates jobs. It's a private sector that gets into exports, and we have to create that environment. I would say to young people, and I've been saying this for a while, they're so creative today. The world is changing so fast. Give them an opportunity to just do their businesses. Don't worry about regulating and licensing and registering and all at the beginning. They will come into that net anyway. As they grow, they have to come into the net. They can't even get a bank loan without coming into the net. But let them grow, right? So you need that kind of reform. Then
there was a time like that. I think in 2018, 17, we saw a lot of people coming in as entrepreneurs, leaving their 9-to-5 jobs.
That's right. Then if they are setting up kind of a business, they need plug and play situations. They need zones, they will need officers and things like that. They will need capital and they will need infrastructure. This needs to be provided. If somebody is doing something like manufacturing, right, they need so many different licenses. Everywhere they go, they get blocked, they get delayed. For example, land is a big issue. They need land for a factory or for an office. We are going to create a land bank. We tried this in the earlier part when we got MCC to basically digitalize the land thing. That was a prerequisite to creating a land bank. I had a first-hand experience trying to create a multimodal transport hub in Moratuwa. I had to sit down the CGR, the CTB, the UDA, the Municipal Council. There were about 6 agencies. And every agency that sits thinks that the asset is owned by them. These assets are national assets. The shareholders of these assets are the people in this country. That is why we are saying we'll create a land bank, so that it's easy to provide. Trade reforms have to be looked at, trade reforms. Then of course tax reforms will have to go with it. Labor reforms, my heavens, I can't imagine Anukumar Dissanayake doing labor reforms. That business community will tell you how critical and how important these reforms are. Some of the people who destroyed the private sector businesses, held boards, called the workers out, they are running to be in parliament. I hope he doesn't appoint them as ministers of his government after destroying businesses. So ultimately these reforms, fundamental reforms have to be done. They have to be done urgently and quickly. And I think even the president has a better chance if he has us actually in government, but he himself won't be able to do it because the opposition to his reforms will come internally from the cadre types.
Tell me, leaders tend to be either the makers or the breakers. Are you all led by the face that the country wants to see?
What do you mean by
party.
that? Okay, yeah. So I would put it like this. I completely agree with you on the premise that leadership is critical. I completely agree with that. For anything to improve, anything to grow, leadership is absolutely critical. But I would also say that it is all relative. If you look at Sri Lanka's leadership, right, one of the things that it has lacked right from the beginning is experience. I even go back in history and look at D.S. Senanayake. Right? I mean, gentlemen, there's no question there were lots of gentlemen, right? More recently only we have had the rogues leading our country, but if you go back in time, there were lots of gentlemen leading the country, but experience lacked. Then you had SWRD, who, went to Oxford, came back, but I'm talking of work experience, lack of work experience, right? Dudley Senayake, I'm really not sure, right? Then you look at Ranil Wickramaratne, lawyers tell me, that, he didn't practice his profession, but he got into politics very, very early, right? Again, experience. I'm not running down a single person. I'm just answering your question analytically. Then you look at R. Premadasa. It was experience again, a particular kind of experience. You look at Maithripala Sirisena. He had some experience at a very, I would say, non-managerial government level. D.B. Wijayatunga, right? Mahinda Rajapaksa, right? What's the experience, right? Then did I leave? Chandrika Kumaranatunga. So some were educated, and I would say some were gentlemanly or clean or whatever. And I'm not looking at that. I'm analyzing it. So relatively lack of experience right through. So there is no leaders who have had experience. Some have been educated, and more recently, the people who are coming in are educated. So I think this is a relative issue. Certainly, I would strive for a country where leaders are clean, first principle, second principle, people of experience. I put experience first, ahead of education. Ahead of it, and then educated. So that's a country that we need to strive for.
Well answered. Ignored my question. After the break. Thank you to our friends at XXL for joining us on Danu on Fire. Now, when you really want to go out there, look your best and shine, you need to feel your best, and you need some options. And XXL has those options for you. No matter how curvy or voluptuous you are, they have something for everyone. Visit them today at their flagship store, if not at One Golf Face, Colombo.
I just say it.
Welcome back to the show, the final segment, speaking to two I want to say young, but there was a time. Too well experienced. Not much of a politician, I must say, but you all are good people. I am only saying this because I know them on a personal level, and I've known Harsha from when he was just Dr. Harsha, and then he became Member of Parliament, Minister. All of those things came after. But always you all have lived, you all had opportunities to earn big, live good. But you all decided, then that is a point that I emphasize for anyone who comes to serve from any party. It doesn't need to be from a party. It just needs to come with the purpose of serving. After all, this is what you do for the public. Now, I have a question. Have you all ever thought, to be very honest, we may be outsiders too, but we see things through a very sketchy way of looking at things, and we feel, but sometimes we feel the right people are not in the parliament. Right people who might be in the party is not in the parliament. Some right people are dead, unfortunately. But when we see all of this, we feel like, sometimes every place is crippled or corrupted, or sometimes favoration, money, all of these speak words. In midst of all this, disappointments might have hit you all over and over again. Those smart ones can understand everything that I'm saying, okay? And disappointments may have hit you all. Have you all ever sat back and thought, I'm done with this nonsense, I'm just going to leave? I would have, of course, packed up and gone by now. What keeps you all here? Losing hairline, all of this.
You noticed that, no? Okay, actually last time I actually left, 2020. I left. I actually told Eran, I'm done. I actually gave my files also to Eran and said, I'm done.
Just to him.
And I told, I said, here is everything, you take this and run. And I told Sajid,
I'm done.
And then, because, I felt, 10 years I've served, how much, did what we could. Then he said, no, you must stay back. And then I came back. That's really what happened. But this time, I am really eager to sort of give it the best I could, because I actually now see people appreciating the work that we have done. Now, as a politician, that's the biggest satisfaction
that you'll get in
right.
life.
You go talk to people, people say thank you. You did this or that, and because of what you guys did, this is what we have got, but we can get a lot more if you, help us get there. So that gives me on the one hand, satisfaction as to what we've achieved as politicians, and two, a sense of almost, people expect us to perform. People expect us to do things that will make their lives better. So there's almost a huge responsibility, you see. So those are the things that certainly drive me, and I'm sure Eran as well.
Yeah, Danu, I got invited 3 times. Once I was working behind the scenes and said, why don't you become General Secretary of the party? I turned it down straight away because I had no political background for it. Then once I was told, why don't you become the Mayor of Colombo? I went home and I told my wife, I had a swollen head. She looked at me and she said, Pisuda. That was the end of that. Then it was on the 3rd time that when the Ranil Wickramaratne invited me and said, you must at least take a seat in Parliament. So I had time to think about it. And I came to the conclusion that unlike in the private sector where you have KPIs and goals, I may not achieve it. I came to the conclusion that if I'm going into this, I must go into it only to do the right thing, right thing. And I encourage myself every day.
And what did your wife say at that time?
By that, she went and consulted my son and daughter who had now grown up, they were in university and graduating. And when she had said it to them, my son and daughter had said, he must follow his conscience. We shouldn't be influencing it. So when she came and told me that, I knew the time was right. I had to only tell them one thing. I said, I'll have a chat with them, and I said to them, I may not be able to help you with your postgraduate education if I step out, because the income virtually disappears. I won't be able to do that. And they said, we look after ourselves. You get on if you think it's the right thing to do. So in this question is, you need to come to do the right thing. We may not see the results. Now, I was also encouraged by the story of Martin Luther King. Harsha and I are both Eisenhower Fellows. And when I was an Eisenhower Fellow, I went and spent some time in the Martin Luther King Center. And Martin Luther King, right, just got with people. He saw the discrimination of blacks versus whites, small movement, grow. Ultimately, it ended up in Washington, 1 million people, and he made that famous speech, I have a dream. And then he was going through the small meetings, and he was on a balcony, and he was shot dead. And Lyndon B. Johnson was president of the United States of America. He brought in the anti-discriminatory laws after Martin Luther King's life. I look back and then see a black man from Kenya comes to study in the United States. If you have gone overseas, we are dark people, it's white communities we go into. And then he has an affair, he has a child, he goes back to Kenya, leaves the child with the white mom, right? And that person, right, becomes president of the United States of America, the unthinkable. And I thought about that 40 years later, and it was because Martin Luther King had sown the seeds. So I look at it like this: we are there to do the right thing, we'll sow the seeds. We may not see everything we are fighting for even in our lifetime, but there will be young people who will pick it up from there, and I am convinced that they will change this country.
How young are we looking at? Because, throughout the time I was born, I've just seen everything that we are like, for the future, I'm like, when will our generation get a chance? Not y'all, I'm talking about a younger version of us. But I wanted to ask you this final question before we wrap things up. Please tell me, now ideally each party will get their seats depending on the votes they have got. But all the parties need to give list of national list nominees. How does the national list nominations work? And how do we know, like, is there like the first to the 10th and the first 3, first 5, like if you're the 9th and there are no 9 seats, you don't get it? Oh, that's how it works.
No, not necessarily. I mean, there have been instances where people's names were not in the national list and they became prime ministers of this country. True. Wickramaratne, I think. His name wasn't there. I don't know whether you can still do it, but the reason why you have a national list is for those people who
can
may not
contribute.
But not necessarily be able.
People skilled.
That's right, and also professionals, smaller communities that need to be represented in parliament, etc. But since of late, the nationalist has been used to bring back, people who may sometimes,
Help.
Yeah, and also, people who may not be able to sort of win, people who lost elections. I mean, Ranil Wickramaratne was a classic case, and but it has been misused. Need to really, rethink about this national list, and at least 50% of the members or the list ought to be women. At least that one, we can say, look, we can bring women in through the national list. But none of the political parties have done that. So there's a long way to go in order to fix the national list.
So there you go. National list is supposed to be the cherry on top. That's not happening. It's an overall problem to all parties. My little me saying this, I live in Piliyandra, don't come and shoot me. On that note, we need to wrap things up. Thank you so very much for coming and being on this show. I wish you all the very best for the upcoming few busy days and election to follow. May the good win and may the right thing happen to our country. That's what we all pray for. On that note, we wrap things up. Thank you so very much for being with us on the show. And at the same time, make sure it's never about the party. It's about the people who make the party. That's what actually ends up creating a country. Thank you to Taj for hosting us, for your hospitality. We'll see you again.